leader Molavi Hibatullah Akanzada.
His Highness the Amirul Momineen, may God bless him and grant him peace, has instructed to start the construction of the dams at Kunar as soon as possible, and to enter into agreements with internal companies, and not to wait for foreign companies.
The green light for blocking Pakistan's water source underpins the Taliban's urgency while it deals with
Because each season when Real Madrid and FC Barcelona collide, the football world holds its breath. El Clasico is more than just a game. It's a legacy of pride, history and a rivalry that goes beyond the sport itself. The two giants will meet for the first time in the 2025-26 campaign at Santiago Bernabeu, setting the stage for yet another electrifying chapter brimming with intensity, emotion and drama. The burning question for fans is, can Real Madrid beat Barcelona, who are coming off an iconic UCL win? That's the big debate on our sports meter today. Scan the QR code on your screen and have your say, because your vote decides the score.
दादी के हाथों का जादू और खुशबू से महकता घर, माँ की मुस्कुराहट और खाने की सुगंध, MDH गरम मसाला,
क्योंकि हर रिश्ता है स्वाद से जुड़ा।
प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा आर प्योर मसाला।
After finally agreeing on a ceasefire with Pakistan,
Hi there, welcome back to your favorite deep dive show on stories contemporary and consequential for India. This week there was a lot to pick, and I bring 3 for you. One purely domestic, second from our neighborhood, and the third one from the world of geopolitics. First up, the Afghanistan mistake that Pakistan would pay for through its nose. The Durand Line is hot again, and this time the Pakistani generals might have bitten more than they can chew. Second, the sanctions war by the West, essentially led by the United States against Russia, has intensified this week with global consequences. It's Cold War 2.0 by non-military means, and you get to hear the consequences. And finally, a look at Bihar's impractical and unsustainable election promises made by parties cutting across the political divide. There's just one lesson from Bihar freebie promises. Dreams need foundations, not unimplementable promises. Let's get going. Hubris always end with ignominy. The Pakistan army realized it this week, not for the first time, of course, at the hands of the Taliban regime in Kabul. Such was the military and diplomatic disaster inflicted on Pakistan by Afghanistan that a little less shameless leadership would have no place to hide. But when General Asim Munir can anoint himself a failed marshal despite a complete decimation by India during Operation Sindoor, he can be considered Teflon-coated when it comes to matters of shape. So it is that when Pakistan launched its air strikes across the Durand Line into Afghanistan, the generals in Rawalpindi, driven by hubris, did not anticipate the ferocity of the response. Not only did a ragtag Afghan military force, still organizing itself into a modern army, hit back, they captured Pakistani tanks and soldiers, took off their pants, and hoisted them at town squares. The pageantry had a message: don't mess around with the Afghans. In a way, Kabul is the burial ground of empires, from the British to the Russians, from the Americans to now the buffoonish Pakistan army. Like with India, so with Afghanistan, Pakistan folded up in 4 days and cried uncle, seeking ceasefire through mediation. Qatar came to the rescue, but it did not end there. The Afghans gave an ultimatum. If the statement of ceasefire released by Qatar did not remove the word border used for the Durand Line, there won't be a let-up in the wrath of the Afghans. It took the Qataris all of 1 day to make that amend. As the Pakistanis were celebrating the reprieve, Afghanistan's defense minister, Mullah Muhammad Yaqub, fired a salvo. The Durand Line was not up for discussion, and that nations should beware of calling it a border between them and Pakistan. Why this touchiness about the Durand Line? Here's a brief history. After having failed in the First and Second Afghan wars in the 18th century, the British adopted a two-pronged strategy to secure British India's northern borders along the Hindu Kush ranges against an expanding Russian empire. First was a policy of territorial acquisition by creep, slow capture of small regions along the colonial borders, and then to negotiate with the then Emir of Afghanistan, a border which would formalize the boundaries, effectively turning Afghanistan into a buffer state between the British and Russian super empires. When Sir Mortimer Durand, the then Foreign Secretary of the British government, arrived in Kabul to negotiate with the Emir, Abdur Rahman Khan, in 1893, he found an unwilling negotiator. The Emir opposed the border that would coerce him to abandon his formal sovereignty over the Pashtun tribes, which would remain outside the Afghan border. When Durand asked him why he wanted to keep Waziristan, for example, which was very poor on natural resources and was scarcely populated, Abdur Rahman answered with one word, Naam, which means honor. The Khan was ultimately forced to sign the agreement under the threat of an economic embargo. He was dependent on the British for arms, ammunition, and subsidies to maintain control over his territories. He also wanted to avoid a superpower war between Britain and Russia on his land. As with the Emir in 1893, so with the Emirates of Taliban now, and all and sundry who have ruled Afghanistan in the intervening centuries. Nobody has ever accepted the legitimacy of the Durand Line. Pakistan inherited the 1893 agreement, but there was never a formal ratification between Islamabad and Kabul of the same. Now here is an interesting twist. When the partition plan was put into action by the British, Pashtun leader Khan Abdul Ghaffar Khan, also known as Frontier Gandhi in our textbooks, declared that his people did not want to join Pakistan. They wanted to either be independent or be with fellow Afghans. But with the British brokering, a referendum was held in which both the options were not available. The Pashtuns could either join India or Pakistan, which they ultimately did. Again, under the pressure of British and the Muslim League. Can you imagine? Even this swathe of territory under Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province today did not want to be part of Pakistan. Imagine again, had the British not played the great game and forced the Pashtuns to join Pakistan, Pakistan would have been an even more moth-eaten Pakistan than what Jinnah ultimately got. Unfortunately for the people of Afghanistan, a century and more later, the great game has continued. Only the faces have changed. As the Russians came into Afghanistan in the late 1970s, the Americans propped up the Taliban, with Pakistan becoming a willing partner. Through the 1980s, 1990s, and the 2000s, the Afghans, particularly the Pashtuns, have continued to pay the price of war and strife. As Pakistan sought an elusive strategic depth in controlling Afghanistan, and chose to become a staging ground for the radical extremist and terror elements in America's Afghan war, it has got equally cinched, and the result is an active insurgency in both its provinces to the west, Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There's a groundswell of anger among the Afghans. They are meticulously rebuilding the war machine. This video, for example, shows the 1990s era junked Russian tanks being re-engineered for training purposes. Videos are being released projecting military readiness to inflict costs in case Pakistan repeats the misadventure of past fortnight. At the heart of the dispute is Pakistani insistence that while the Afghan Taliban are good, their Pakistani cousins, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan or the TTP, are bad terrorists. The GHQ thought their selective targeting of TTP won't elicit an Afghan response. They have realized to the contrary, with a bloodied nose in the bargain. Look at this video. It claims that while the Pak army is hitting targets in Kabul looking for the TTP leadership, the Pakistani Taliban operate freely in Bajaur, a district in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa fully in the jurisdiction of the ineffective and toothless Pakistan army. Look at this narration by Abdullah Azam, one of the advisors to the Taliban government in Kabul. He recalls an anecdote from June 2021 in Doha, when Taliban were yet to capture Kabul, in which the then ISI chief, General Faiz Hamid, sought the intervention of top Taliban leadership to stop the Mujahideen from obstructing the erection of barbed wire fence in the Baramcha sector of the Durand Line. The Taliban leadership flatly refused. Faiz was not even given an audience with the military chief. Imagine, at that time, technically, the Taliban were at war with a 45-nation coalition led by the United States. And yet, on the Durand Line question, they were firm as a rock. So to now budge or bend when they are in power is ruled out. This is an Afghan commander, for example, instructing a Pakistani ranger across the fence, which Pakistan has built at around $5 billion of cost, not to carry out patrols as the fence is an imaginary line, and that they should seek Afghan permission given that across the line also is Pashtun territory. There's a strong view in Kabul that the Pakistan army launched the war at the behest of America, so that the Americans can find a way to get into Afghanistan again and capture the Bagram Air Base, something repeatedly spoken of by President Trump. During the American occupation of Afghanistan in the last 2 decades, Pakistan provided its territory to be used by the Americans to launch deep strikes in the mountains, as many as 75,000 by some estimates, to target Taliban. It is payback time now. Videos like this one are calling Pakistan a betrayer, a slave nation. This song is in Pashto, but you hear the word namak haram. That's used for Pakistan. Some Afghans are having fun too. Look at this post. Because Pakistan has shut all trade from the Chaman, Torkham or Spin Buldak posts, the tomato supply from Afghan side has gone and affected the vegetable price, which is selling at as high as rupees 700 to a kilo, making it perhaps the second highest inflationary commodity after gold in Pakistan. Last year, just as the Pakistani elites were gloating over successful holding of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Islamabad, in the Jamrud district of troubled Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, a tribal council met and passed 22 resolutions against the Pakistani state. The Jirga was organized by indigenous rights movement, the Pashtun Tahaffuz Mahaz or PTM. Now banned, it has among its objectives a border-free Pashtun state. The Jirga demanded that there should be a visa-free travel for Pashtuns along what Pakistan claims to be its international border with Afghanistan, and which all Afghan governments, including the present one of Taliban, dispute and disagree with, the Durand Line. Historically, and for the oomph factor, the attention has always been on the Red Cliff border or the India-Pakistan border. But it is the Durand Line which has always been hotter in terms of conflict and war, vis-a-vis the Red Cliff Line. And this fortnight, Pakistan's biggest strategic bugbear came true, like how? With the Pakistani forces locked in a battle of attrition involving ground control with Afghanistan. Pakistan midwifed Taliban in its bid to find a strategic depth in Afghanistan. Ironically, today, it is the Afghan Taliban which has found strategic depth in Pakistan with an aligned civilian population in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. As that tongue twister goes, as you sow, so shall you reap. Pakistan has some chickens come home to roost for its indulgence with radicalism and terror over the last 4 decades. While they roost, they are also roasting the Pakistani nation. Wish them Godspeed. Moving on to the second segment. There's a Cold War 2.0 going on, and it's cold only in the historical context of the phrase. The 2.0 version is smoldering hot, with consequences as devastating as the first one. This is the world of economic warfare being led in the main by the United States under President Trump. From tariffs to sanctions, from coercive negotiations to trade barriers, everything is kosher in this war. The target might be Russia, but ricochet is felt in Chennai and Chengdu alike. America might impose tariffs in search of an elusive parity, but the dominoes disrupt supply chains for Africa alike. On Wednesday, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that if things continue to move in the direction that they were, then the rules-based global trading system, built painstakingly over decades post-World War II, would collapse. He was speaking at the World Trade Organization in Geneva. The WTO, in many ways, has already become a mute spectator as countries negotiate bilateral or multilateral free trade agreements. The trade wars unleashed by Trump's tariff obsession are causing supply chain disruptions, policy dissonance, protectionist scramble, with least developed countries taking the maximum brunt. On Thursday, the European Union released the 19th round of sanctions since the start of Russia's Ukraine war, targeting 48 entities, including 3 from India. The EU leadership believes that the restrictions, which include freezing of all assets of these entities within EU jurisdiction, would debilitate Russia's war machine by either choking money or tech supply, or both. The 18th round a couple of months back had Nayara Energy of India go under the bus, prompting a tapering of Russian oil imports. With the latest round, that might become a cascade. On Thursday, India's biggest private oil refiner came out with a statement that they would align their energy purchases with larger objectives of the government of India. A euphemism, perhaps, for shifting away from the Russian oil purchases to hedge risk of assets freeze. India's energy security is not currently or yet under acute threat from these sanctions. But refiners, both public and private, will need to make difficult and potentially costly choices. Since 2022, India has walked a tightrope in balancing its energy needs with Western expectations. But are these tools working for the West? That's the million-dollar question. Russia is for sure feeling the pinch on capital and technology. Its financial sector is under strain, and its economy is increasingly isolated. And yet, Russia's GDP grew by 3.6% in 2024, outpacing even the United States. This resilience is largely due to its pivot to non-Western partners and its wartime economic model. And that's a big geopolitical shift. In its visceral hate for Putin, the West has inadvertently landed the Russians in the lap of China. And more significantly, what was the primary objective or goal of the sanctions? Ending the war. And where are we on that? I'm not really sure. A frustrated Trump is pressing on the pedal, putting Europe into a squeeze to do more. The strategy has shifted from ancillary sanctions to direct targeting of Russian big firms this week. Wednesday marked the first time in his second term that Trump slapped Ukraine-related sanctions on Russia's two biggest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. The EU followed on Thursday. United Kingdom had sanctioned the same companies a week ago, making it look like a coordinated Western move. Oil rose sharply by 5%, suggesting immediate global economic consequences. This seems like a coordinated Western move and a major policy shift. Earlier, Trump was hoping to browbeat nations like India through tariffs to taper trade with Russia, hoping to blunt Russian economy in the bargain. But that's proven counterproductive. Russia is in China's lap, India is mighty annoyed, and the world is taking a serious look at alternative financial systems, not dominated by the American dollar. This week also saw Ethiopia becoming second country after Kenya in the African continent to explore de-dollarization, with its leadership negotiating with the Chinese to convert their dollar loans into yuan. Too early to wager that. But if the West persists with its tariffs and sanctions push, it is likely that a parallel economic order might emerge, less dependent on the United States and the Western camp, less dependent on the dollar. As the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. If the intention is to prevent de-dollarization, then Trump's America needs a rethink. Here's the deal. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was quoted by the media, or American media, as saying that this war is about China versus the rest of the world. If that be the case, then America under Trump is showing no stomach for the battle. There's been some pussyfooting to take Xi head on. In the same interview, Bessent said that the United States had things more powerful than rare earth supplies that China was weaponizing with disruptions. Why not bring them on and spare the tariffs? As Nike says, just do it.
हमारी सरकार बनने पर जितनी जीविका सीएम दीदियां हैं, यानी कम्युनिटी मोबिलाइजर्स हैं, उन सभी सीएम दीदियों को स्थायी कर उन्हें सरकारी कर्मचारी का दर्जा देकर उनके वेतन को 30,000 प्रति माह हम लोग करेंगे.
This was Bihar's leader of opposition and chief ministerial candidate of the Mahagathbandhan, Tejasvi Yadav, promising an undeliverable to the people of his state. Promises are often the currency of elections, from free electricity to guaranteed jobs. Political parties have long relied on populist pledges to woo voters. But what happens when these promises collide with the hard wall of fiscal reality? Bihar might present a repeat of Himachal or Karnataka, or even Maharashtra in days to come. And I'm not saying this with the belief that Tejasvi is coming to power, because even the NDA has made promises that would strain delicate financial situation of Bihar. As a build-up to the polls, Tejasvi and his party, the RJD, have pledged that if they come to power, they would provide one government job per family in Bihar within 20 months. Let's look at the numbers. Bihar has approximately 27 million families, and only about 2.1 million of them currently have a member in a government job. To fulfill Tejasvi's promise, the state would then need to create 25 plus million or 2.5 crore new government jobs. a logistical and financial impossibility. For perspective, the present strength of the Bihar government workforce is about 25 lakhs, which means 10 times more employees than the present if Tejaswi's promise is to be fulfilled. With average annual cost per government employee pegged at rupees 2.5 lakhs, the total salary bill would balloon to 6.4 lakh crores annually. That's nearly double of Bihar's entire budget of 3.27 lakh crores this year, and 2.5 times India's central government salary bill. Of course, the RJD isn't alone in playing the populist card. The ruling NDA has its own arsenal of promises. From the Mukhyamantri Mahila Rozgar Yojana, which transferred 10,000 rupees to 75 lakh women, to tripling pensions for widows and the elderly, the NDA has leaned heavily on direct benefit transfers. These schemes, though framed not as handouts, but as seed capital to promote entrepreneurship and self-reliance, still strain the limited fiscal resources of the state. Nitish Kumar's government has also announced rupees 25,000 for Vikas Mitra workers, increased honorariums for Anganwadi workers, and promised 1 crore jobs over 5 years. While these promises may appear more grounded than the RJD's, they still raise questions about the sustainability and fiscal discipline. I have delved on this issue of revdi culture in our polity multiple times in the past. Bihar isn't the only state grappling with the consequences of populist promises. In Karnataka, the Congress government's much publicized 5 Guarantees program has come under fire for straining the state's finances. Despite allocating over 50,000 crore rupees to these schemes, the state is now facing a revenue deficit of 20,000 crores or more. Many Karnataka Congress leaders, including Chief Minister Siddaramaiah himself on the floor of the assembly, have admitted that not all promises were meant to be implemented, suggesting that some were made purely for electoral appeal. Ditto with Maharashtra. The Mahayuti government's flagship Ladki Bahin scheme, which promised monthly payouts to over 2 crore women, was initially allocated 46,000 crore rupees. However, the 2025-26 budget slashed this to 36,000 crores. And the promised increase from 1,500 to 2,100 per month remains unfulfilled. The government also failed to deliver on its farm loan waiver promise, citing budgetary constraints. With a revenue deficit of 45,000 plus crore rupees, Maharashtra's fiscal space is shrinking rapidly, forcing the government to shelve or delay several schemes post-elections. We know the mockery in Himachal Pradesh, from the samosa probe to the toilet tax. So what does all this tell us? Populist promises, while electorally effective, often ignore the economic realities that underpin governance. In Bihar's case, both major alliances, the RJD-led Mahagathbandhan and the BJP-led NDA, are guilty of dangling carrots that the state's fragile finances cannot or can scarcely afford. The real challenge lies in balancing aspirations with accountability. Bihar needs jobs, yes. It needs better infrastructure, education, and healthcare. But these cannot come at the cost of fiscal collapse and the development imperatives. What's needed is a long-term vision, one that invests in human capital, strengthens institutions, and builds resilient infrastructure. Tejaswi might be desperate to come to power. Nitish might be desperate to hold on to power. But ultimately, the people of Bihar have to decide how their bread is buttered in the long run. Thanks for watching.
प्योर सूजी पास्ता उबालो मिलाओ और खाओ
8 मिनट में तैयार।
क्या टेस्ट है सबका राजा हार्डकोर मसाला
आधे बाउल दही में 4 चम्मच MDH चटनी पुदीना मसाला डाला, स्टर करो, पुदीना चटनी तैयार। MDH चटनी पुदीना मसाला।
Hear from the others.
The National Basketball Association, NBA, is reeling from a massive scandal as the FBI has exposed an illegal gambling and sports rigging operation involving current and former players and coaches. This incident questions the NBA's systemic issue that threatens the very foundation of fair play in professional basketball. The FBI's investigation revealed a network of corruption that spanned years, involving not just the players, but also notorious crime families.
But as you now know, individuals such as Chauncey Billups, Damon Jones, and Terry Rozier were taken into custody today, former, current NBA players and coaches. What you don't know is that this is an illegal gambling operation and sports rigging operation that spanned the course of years. The FBI led a coordinated takedown across 11 states to arrest over 30 individuals today responsible for this case, which is very much ongoing. Not only did we crack into the fraud that these perpetrators committed on the grand stage of the NBA, but we also entered and executed a system of justice against La Casa Nostra to include the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchesi crime families. And you'll hear more about those details today and years. And the fraud is mind-boggling. It's not hundreds of dollars. It's not thousands of dollars. It's not tens of thousands of dollars. It's not even millions of dollars.
From Asia's largest news headquarters, setting the agenda for Bharat. You're watching Republic.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome to the Saturday edition of 6 Stories at 6. I am Rakshita Mishra. Viewers, we'll start today this edition with the big story coming in from Indore. Shameful incident as 2 Australian women cricketers were stalked and harassed. The accused has been arrested. We'll get you more details of this case. Story number 2 is the exercise Trishul that is rattling Pakistan. It has already restricted the airspace. Details in a short while from now. And story number 3 is the gold theft in Sabrimala. Republic Kannada getting you the exclusive details, the big revelations in this case, how this gold was stolen and where, to whom was it sold. Story number 4 is the encounter in Delhi. There have been 2 encounters in 3 days, viewers, and dreaded gangsters have been trapped and neutralized as well. Also, the update coming in the doctor suicide case in Satara, viewers. The one accused has been arrested while the main accused, the cop, is absconding. And we also get you the latest from Battleground Bihar, where Amit Shah has intensified the poll battle as he takes on the RJD and Congress in 3 major rallies. Let's start with what happened in Indore, viewers. It's a shocker coming in. It has cast a shadow over Women's World Cup, the Cricket World Cup in India. India is a co-host, and 2 Australian women cricketers were subjected to an unsettling encounter. Cricket Australia has confirmed, and BCCI has condemned the incident, that one of the players was even inappropriately touched by a motorcyclist while walking to a cafe during a day off from their campaign. And with one arrest being made and local authorities stepping in to review the security measures, it's a disturbing event that has raised serious questions about the safety of women and women players too in the country.
A shocking and shameful case of harassment of 2 Australian women cricketers has been reported from Indore of Madhya Pradesh. The 2 Australian cricketers were allegedly stalked and molested by a bike-borne man while they were on their way to a cafe from their hotel.
जो शर्मनाक घटना हुई है मध्य प्रदेश के इंदौर में, जिसमें कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया महिला क्रिकेट खिलाड़ियों के साथ छेड़छाड़ हुई है, इसमें आरोपी को तो कुछ ही घंटों में पुलिस ने पकड़ लिया है। आरोपी का नाम अकील है और वो इंदौर के आजाद नगर में का रहने वाला है। लेकिन इस आरोपी का पिछला कुछ क्रिमिनल रिकॉर्ड भी सामने आया है, जिसके आधार पर अब पुलिस इन्वेस्टिगेट करेगी कि आखिर इसने किस तरह की वारदातें पहले भी की हैं। क्योंकि ये जो पूरा घटनाक्रम हुआ है, इससे कहीं ना कहीं देश की साख खराब होती है। इंडिया की बात करें, भारत की बात करें, तो यहाँ पर अतिथि देवो भव, हम इस थीम पर चलते हैं और इसी के चलते इस पूरे मामले में इंदौर पुलिस की भी काफी किरकिरी हो रही है, क्योंकि सुरक्षा में कहीं ना कहीं बड़ी चूक है।
The Indore police has identified the accused Akil Khan from CCTV footage and arrested him shortly after. Indore Police Commissionerate Additional DCP Crime Branch confirmed that an FIR was registered and the accused was arrested after a strategic operation.
ये ऑस्ट्रेलियन टीम मैनेजमेंट के जो सिक्योरिटी ऑफिसर्स हैं उनके द्वारा एक रिपोर्ट लिखाई गई है। उनके द्वारा ये बताया गया कि उनके जो दो प्लेयर्स हैं, जो टीम मेंबर्स हैं, उनके साथ इनअप्रोप्रिएट बिहेवियर हुआ है और इसमें फिलहाल FIR रजिस्टर्ड कर दी गई है VNF की धाराओं में। और उसमें आरोपी को जो इंटेंसिव स्ट्रेटेजिक ऑपरेशन के तहत आरोपी को आइडेंटिफाइड किया जाकर आरोपी को गिरफ्तार कर लिया गया है। 74, 78 VNF के तहत आरोपी FIR रजिस्टर्ड की गई है। आरोपी अकील को अरेस्ट कर लिया गया है।
Republic, meanwhile, has spoken to BCCI Secretary Devajit Saikia, who condemned the incident and ensured appropriate action.